Kayamika woke up every morning before the sun rose. She moved slowly, her limp making each step heavy, but her heart was full of determination. She carried her baskets of fruits to the roadside, arranging them carefully, bright oranges at the front, yellow bananas stacked neatly, and green mangoes placed where they would catch the eyes of passers-by. Children often laughed at the way she limped, and some adults called her names, but Kayamika only lowered her head and smiled. She had learned that life could be cruel, but she refused to let cruelty take away her kindness. Her stall was small, made of a wooden table with uneven legs, but she made it clean and inviting. As the morning grew bright, she called out to passers-by in a gentle voice, offering fruits at fair prices. Most ignored her, rushing to buses or taxis, but a few stopped, buying fruits to carry home. Every coin mattered to Kayamika. Every sale meant she could eat that day, maybe even save a little for her dream of opening a shop one day. By noon, the sun grew hot, burning her face and making sweat run down her cheeks. She used a small rag to wipe her forehead, then took a sip of water from a plastic bottle. People walked past, some glancing at her limp with pity, others with scorn. Kayamika did not mind. Her mother had once told her, "A strong heart is greater than strong legs." Those words guided her every day. That afternoon, as she sat quietly waiting for a customer, she heard the sound of a powerful engine. A sleek black car slowed down and parked near her stall. The car was shiny, the kind she had only seen in magazines or on TV. Her heart raced. She wondered if the owner had stopped to ask for directions or maybe to buy something. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man dressed in a fine suit. His shoes shone as if they had just been polished. People around turned to look, whispering about who he might be. He carried himself with calm confidence, his face serious yet gentle. This was Tund, one of the richest billionaires in the city, though Kayamika did not know it yet. She only saw a man who walked with grace, his eyes scanning her stall with interest. He walked closer, and Kayamika quickly straightened her baskets, nervous but trying to appear calm. She greeted him softly, "Good afternoon, sir. Would you like some fruits?" Tund looked at her, then at the fruits. But his eyes did not linger on the oranges or the bananas. They rested on Kayamika herself. He noticed her limp, the way she leaned slightly on her left side. He noticed her hands, rough from hard work, yet careful as they touched each fruit. And he noticed her eyes, tired but full of quiet strength and kindness. For a moment, Tund forgot why he had even stopped. He had planned only to buy something to eat, but now he felt drawn to this woman standing before him. Her smile was small, yet it carried warmth that many of the people in his rich circles never showed. "I would like some oranges," he finally said. His voice was deep but kind. Kayamika nodded quickly and began to pick out the best ones. She placed them gently into a small bag, making sure none were bruised. When she handed the bag to him, he gave her more money than the fruits cost. She quickly counted the notes and stretched out her hand to return the change. But Tund shook his head. "Keep it." Kayamika looked at him with surprise. Many rich-looking men had passed by before, some throwing coins at her as though she were a beggar, others ignoring her completely. But this man spoke with respect. Still, she was not the kind to take more than she had earned. "Sir," she said softly, pushing the money back toward him. "Please take your change. I only take what is mine." For a long moment, Tund stared at her. No one had ever refused his money before. People usually stretched their hands greedily, asking for more. But this fruit seller with a limp stood firm, her voice steady, her eyes honest. A faint smile touched his lips. He took the change not because he needed it but because he respected her dignity. "Thank you," he said quietly. Kayamika smiled, her face glowing despite the sweat on her brow. "May God bless your kindness, sir." Those words, simple as they were, touched Tund's heart more than the polished compliments of the wealthy women he met daily. He looked at her one more time before stepping back into his car. As the engine roared and the car drove away, Kayamika stood quietly, her heart still beating fast. She did not know who he was. She did not know that one of the richest men in the city had just bought fruits from her. All she knew was that, for the first time in a long while, someone had looked at her not with pity or mockery, but with respect. And Tund, driving away in his sleek car, found himself glancing in the mirror, his mind lingering on the fruit seller with the limp who carried strength in her eyes. Something about her had stirred his heart, something he could not yet explain. That single meeting, simple as it seemed, was the beginning of a story neither of them could have imagined. The next day, Kayamika returned to her small stall by the roadside. She arranged her oranges, bananas and mangoes neatly, just as she always did. Life had taught her to be careful with even the smallest things because she did not have much. She thought about the man who had bought fruits from her the day before. His face stayed in her mind not because of his wealth or his fine clothes, but because of the way he had looked at her with respect. It was rare for someone to see her like that. That afternoon, when the sun was high and the streets busy, the same black car slowed near her stall. Kayamika's heart beat faster, though she quickly forced herself to stay calm. The door opened and once again the tall man stepped out. His presence seemed to make people turn their heads. Some whispered, wondering who he was, but Kayamika only lowered her gaze and greeted him politely. "Good afternoon, sir. Would you like some fruits today?" she asked softly. Tund smiled faintly. "Yes, give me some bananas and oranges." She picked the best ones, careful not to bruise them, and placed them in a small bag. When she handed it to him, he paid again and once more he waved off the change. Kayamika looked up at him, surprised. "Sir," she said gently, "I cannot keep what does not belong to me." Her words were quiet but firm. She held out the change with both hands, showing respect, yet also showing that she would not bend her honesty for anyone. Tund hesitated, then accepted the money. But inside he felt something stir. Most people wanted to please him because of his wealth. They showered him with empty words and fake smiles. But here was a young woman who treated him like any other man, no more, no less. "Thank you," he said. Kayamika smiled, her eyes bright even in the heat of the sun. "May God bless your kindness," she replied. Her words, so simple, stayed in his mind long after he got back into his car. He drove away but his thoughts lingered on her. From that day Tund found reasons to pass by her stall often. Sometimes he bought oranges, sometimes bananas, and sometimes he asked for mangoes even though he had no plan to eat them. He only wanted to see her again, to hear her gentle voice, and to feel that quiet honesty that surrounded her. Kayamika, on her part, did not think much of it at first. She saw him as a regular customer. She did not know who he really was, nor did she guess that he was one of the richest men in the city. To her, he was simply a polite man who respected her work. She treated him like any other person, always picking the best fruits for him, always returning his change and always sending him away with a kind word. One afternoon as she packed fruits for him, a group of young men nearby whispered and laughed. One of them said loudly, "Ah, Kayamika, see how big men like this are buying from you. Maybe one day he will marry you." The others burst out laughing. Kayamika's face grew hot, and she looked down quickly, ashamed. But Tund turned and looked at them with a firm gaze. His eyes were sharp, and the laughter of the young men died in their throats. Without saying a word, they walked away embarrassed. Kayamika glanced at him, her lips pressed together in gratitude. He gave her a small nod as if to say she did not need to worry. That evening after he left, she sat on a wooden stool and thought about him. She wondered why a man like him, who clearly had money and power, would come to buy fruits from her again and again. Maybe he just liked her fruits, she told herself. Maybe he passed that road often. She shook her head and laughed softly at her own thoughts. It was foolish to imagine anything else. But Tund was thinking differently. Each time he saw her, his respect for her grew. She was poor, yet she carried herself with dignity. She was mocked, yet she remained gentle. She struggled every day, yet she still smiled. To him, she was more beautiful than any woman dressed in fine clothes, because her beauty came from the strength inside her. One day he asked her, "Do you always sell fruits here?" "Yes, sir," Kayamika answered. "This is what I do every day. It is how I live." "Do you have anyone to help you?" he asked again. Kayamika shook her head. "No, sir. It is only me. My parents are gone and I have no one else. But God gives me strength." Her voice was calm without self-pity. She spoke as if she had already accepted her life as it was. But for Tund, her words touched his heart even more deeply. That night, as he lay in his large house surrounded by wealth, he found himself thinking about the fruit seller with the limp. He thought about her rough hands, her soft smile, and the way she refused to take more than what belonged to her. He had met many women, but none had left such a mark on him. And Kayamika, in her small wooden room, thought of him too. She wondered why his visits felt different. She prayed silently that she would not fool herself with dreams that could never come true. He was rich, she was poor. He had everything and she had nothing. Their worlds were too far apart. Yet fate had already begun to weave their stories together, slowly, gently, in ways neither of them could yet see. The days passed slowly, and each day Tund found himself drawn more and more to Kayamika. What started as a simple stop to buy fruits had now turned into long conversations by the roadside. He would park his sleek car under the shade of a tree, step out, and sit on the small wooden bench beside her stall. People walking by would stop and stare. Some would whisper, some would laugh, and some would shake their heads in disbelief. Why would a rich man waste his time with a poor fruit seller? They asked one another. But Tun never paid attention to them. His eyes and ears were only for Kayamika. Kayamika at first was shy. She was not used to men of wealth and power giving her attention. She thought it was only kindness, a passing interest, something that would fade in time. But as the weeks turned into months, she noticed something different. He did not treat her like charity. He listened to her. He asked about her dreams, her fears, her life. When she spoke, he looked at her as if her words were worth gold. That, more than his expensive car or his fine clothes, touched her heart deeply. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, Tund leaned against the stall and asked, "Kayamika, what is it that you want most in life?" She paused, looking down at the basket of mangoes in her hands. Her voice was soft but steady. "I want to open a small fruit shop. Not just this stall by the roadside. A real shop with baskets full of fruits, a roof over my head, and enough space for other women like me, women who suffer but still want to work. I want to help them so they don't have to beg." Her words struck Tund. Here was a woman who had almost nothing, yet she was not thinking only of herself. She dreamed of lifting others too. He smiled slowly. "That is a beautiful dream," he said. "And I believe one day you will make it real." Kayamika smiled back, though she shook her head. "Dreams are sweet, sir, but they need wings. And wings cost money. I only have my fruits." Tund said nothing more, but in his heart, he admired her even more. He had seen many people with wealth, yet few with such a generous spirit. As their bond grew, the whispers in the neighborhood grew louder. Some women passing by would scoff and say, "Look at her, pretending to be important just because a rich man talks to her." Others would laugh behind her back, mocking her limp and calling her foolish for thinking she could ever belong to his world. But whenever she felt their stares burn into her skin, Tund's presence gave her strength. He did not see her limp as a weakness, nor her poverty as shame. To him, her courage was more beautiful than anything money could buy. One afternoon it rained heavily. Water splashed across the dusty road and many people ran for shelter. Kayamika's stall shook as the wind blew hard. She struggled to cover her fruits with an old plastic sheet. Suddenly, a strong hand reached out to help her. She looked up. It was Tund. His fine shoes were already soaked, his expensive suit wet, but he bent down without hesitation, holding the sheet tightly with her until the fruits were safe. When the rain finally stopped, Kayamika looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Why do you do this for me?" she asked quietly. Tund wiped the rain from his face and answered simply, "Because you are worth it." Her heart beat faster at his words. She had heard many men speak sweetly, but his voice carried truth. Still, she reminded herself to be careful. She was a poor fruit seller with a limp. He was a billionaire. Their worlds were too far apart. She dared not hope for too much. But Tund was not moved by what people thought. He began spending more time near her stall. Sometimes he sat and listened to her stories about her childhood. Sometimes he watched her serve customers with patience and honesty. And sometimes he just sat quietly, content to be near her. Kayamika too began to feel something growing inside her, something she had never felt before. It was not just gratitude. It was not just friendship. It was a warmth that made her smile when she thought of him at night and gave her courage when she faced another hard day. She tried to hide it, but it showed in her eyes. One evening, as the sky turned dark, Tund stayed longer than usual. He helped her pack her baskets and carry them to her small room nearby. When he saw where she lived, his heart tightened. The roof was old, the walls thin, and the floor rough. Yet Kayamika welcomed him with a smile, proud of what little she had. "This is my home," she said softly. "It is not much, but it is mine." Tund looked around and then looked at her. "Kayamika, you live with dignity greater than many who sleep in mansions," he said. Her eyes widened at his words and she looked away embarrassed. But her heart filled with a warmth she could not explain. The bond between them was no longer a secret. The neighborhood talked about it every day. Some warned her, "Be careful, men like him don't stay." Others laughed, "He is just playing with you. When he gets tired, he will leave." Kayamika heard them all, and sometimes doubt filled her heart. But whenever she looked at Tund, she saw nothing but sincerity. He had never mocked her, never pitted her. He treated her as if she mattered, and for the first time in her life she began to believe she truly did. And so, as the months passed, the bond between the poor fruit seller with a limp and the handsome billionaire grew stronger. It was a bond built not on riches or beauty, but on respect, kindness, and truth. What neither of them knew was that this bond was about to be tested by the world around them, a test that would either break them apart or draw them closer than ever before. The evening of the charity event was filled with music, lights, and laughter. Expensive cars lined up at the grand entrance of the hotel, and men in sharp suits and women in dazzling dresses filled the hall. Kayamika stood quietly at the corner, holding a simple handbag and wearing a plain gown she had carefully ironed that afternoon. Her heart raced as she watched the people walk past, each one looking like they belonged to a world she had only seen in dreams. When Tund arrived, the whole hall seemed to notice. Men greeted him with respect and women smiled brightly, whispering his name. Everywhere he went, people bowed their heads and said, "Good evening, Sir Tund." Some even clapped him on the back like he was royalty. Kayamika's eyes widened in shock. She froze in place, her hands trembling as the truth slowly settled in her chest. Her Tund, the man who sat by her fruit stall, who helped her cover mangoes during the rain, who carried baskets with her, was not just a kind stranger. He was a billionaire. Her heart pounded harder. She could not believe it. She felt the room spinning as she tried to make sense of it. Why had he hidden this from her? Why did he not tell her? 1,000 questions rushed through her mind. Tund noticed the fear in her eyes and walked over. He gently took her hand, but she pulled it back quickly, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me who you are?" Her voice was not angry but filled with hurt and confusion. She felt small, standing among women in glittering gowns and men in shining shoes. She felt as though she had no place in that room. Tund looked into her eyes, calm and steady. He gave a small smile and said softly, "Because I wanted someone who would see me as a man, not as money. Kayamika, all my life people have loved my wealth but not me. But you gave me respect, you gave me kindness, and you never once asked for anything. You saw me, not my riches." Kayamika's lips trembled as tears gathered in her eyes. She remembered the afternoons they sat together, the laughter they shared, the times he listened to her dreams. All of it was real. He had never boasted, never shown off, never treated her as less. He had simply been Tund, a man who listened and cared. "But look at me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I am just a poor fruit seller, with nothing to give you." Tund stepped closer and wiped her tears with his thumb. "You gave me what no one else could," he said gently. "You gave me truth. You gave me love without price. Kayamika, that is more precious than all the gold I own." At that moment, something inside her broke free. The fear, the doubt, the shame, all melted away. She realized that he had chosen her heart, not her status. He had seen her worth long before she saw his. Around them, people whispered, wondering who the simple girl was that Sir Tund held so tenderly. Some frowned in disapproval, others shook their heads and a few smiled knowingly. But neither Tund nor Kayamika cared. In that crowded hall filled with wealth and power, they stood together, two souls bound by truth. The rest of the evening passed like a dream. Tund introduced her to his friends, not as a stranger but as someone who mattered. Though Kayamika still felt shy and out of place, she found courage in his hand holding hers. And when the event ended, she walked out of the hall with her head lifted higher than ever before. For the first time in her life, Kayamika believed she was enough. The wedding day was filled with warmth and joy. Tund did not choose a grand palace or a golden hall. Instead, he chose a simple garden decorated with flowers, lights, and smiling faces. Kayamika wore a modest white gown that shone brighter than any diamond. Her limp was still there, but she walked with confidence, her heart lifted by the love surrounding her. Guests from different parts of the city gathered, some whispering in disbelief, others clapping with excitement. Many people shook their heads saying, "How can a billionaire marry a poor fruit seller?" But those who looked closely could see the truth in Tund's eyes. His love was real and it was not shaken by status or wealth. He held Kayamika's hand firmly as if to say, "This is my choice and nothing will change it." When the vows were exchanged, Kayamika's voice trembled with emotion. "You saw me when the world ignored me," she said softly. "You gave me dignity when others gave me shame. I promise to love you with all my heart." Tund smiled, his eyes never leaving hers. "And I promise to stand by you not because of what the world thinks but because of what I know. Your heart is my treasure." Cheers filled the garden, and even those who had doubted began to clap. The celebration was not about gold or wealth, it was about love that had risen above fear and mockery. After their marriage, Tund and Kayamika began a new journey. Instead of spending their lives only in luxury, they turned their blessings into hope for others. They created a foundation to help women with disabilities, giving them training in small businesses. Women who once felt forgotten began to smile again. They sold their goods, earned their living, and walked with pride, just as Kayamika once dreamed. Kayamika became a voice for them, speaking at gatherings and telling her story. "I was once mocked as a poor fruit seller," she would say, "but today I stand tall because someone saw my worth." Never let the world tell you that you are less. Kindness and courage can open doors money cannot. Her words touched many hearts. Slowly, people who once laughed at her began to admire her. They saw not just the limp in her leg but the strength in her spirit. She became a symbol of hope, proof that greatness was not only for the rich or the strong, but also for those who refused to give up. Tun stood proudly beside her, supporting her dreams just as she had supported his heart. Their love became a story told across the land, not a tale of money and riches but of kindness, respect, and the courage to love beyond appearances. Kayamika had once been a poor girl by the roadside, mocked and ignored. But now she was more than a wife to a billionaire, she was a queen of compassion, a light to many, and a reminder that true beauty lies not in riches, but in a heart full of love. And so their new life began, simple, beautiful, and filled with purpose.